working group. I learned more about this new member. His name is Curry, and he's one of the musicians. While we walk about 2 or 3 miles, we chat. And I learned quite a lot about Curry, his passion for music, and particularly his interest in blues. Me, being from Spain, I have never heard blues, at least firsthand, and I developed an interest in listening and learning more about this. Shortly after, the Ukrainian-Russian war started. And we know of the things that are happening, the dead, the wounded, and the displaced. And the refugees' stories were portrayed in the front page of the newspapers and on the TV news. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one concerned about this. You are all concerned, and that is the reason that you are here. Of the many stories about refugees, one really impacted me. There were many stories explained, but I'm saying one impacted me. It happens to be that a group of taxi owners and taxi drivers from Barcelona established a shuttle service from Spain to the border of Ukraine and Poland. Preference was given to mothers with children. And these taxi drivers, went to the border, thousands of miles, pick up mothers and children, and 48 hours driving non-stop with 2 drivers, they brought to Spain, and particularly to Barcelona. The story was covered by a local newspaper, and the family, one of the families, sent a text to her mother in Ukraine. A few days later, when this mother was at the border and saw the iconic taxis from Barcelona, they are like the New York taxis, painted in yellow and black, immediately said, "My daughter and my grandchildren are in Barcelona. Could you take me? Make an exception. I'm an elderly woman. Here is my sister. Can you take us?" So the taxi drivers, instead of just following the policy, just taking young mothers with children, also put into the taxi, this mother or grandmother and the aunt. And the story was carried in the newspaper that the family was reunited. This touched my heart because, well, I grew up. I'm very familiar with the taxis and taxi drivers of Barcelona. My father was a taxi driver for 30 years. And although I cannot take a taxi and go to rescue refugees, I said I should do something else than just donate money. So I shared this story with the group that we walk every morning, and immediately were enthusiastic about organizing a fundraising concert. So this is the connection between the blues and the Ukrainian refugees. Refugees are not only in Poland, but Spain has already hosted and received over 200,000 refugees. And that Spain is the farther country in the West. So France, Germany, and many others are doing that. Later on, you are going to hear about Ralph Watts, a former president of ADRA, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, of what is going on not a few weeks ago, as this story that just explained, but just last week. What ADRA is doing specifically to help refugees, to relocate refugees, to feed refugees at the border and in many other European countries. So without further ado, because you didn't came here to listen to me, but to the musicians, I want to introduce Curry, my friend, and he's going to introduce the rest of the team. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you, Joan. Sure appreciate that.
It sure was a surprise to me to be walking with somebody who said, "Let's have a blues concert." And I said, "Okay." And he says, then we had a little gathering in Mickey's in the living room, and then afterwards he hops up and says, "We want to do a concert for Ukrainian refugees." Okay. Meanwhile, I've been thinking, I've been gone for 15 years, back in Des Moines, Iowa, and when I came back here, the people I'd played with had moved out, gone to East Coast, West Coast, farther into LA, etc. And I was wondering where I'd going to be playing this, especially with COVID and hardly playing at all for 2 years. And then Joan just sort of, I got a resurrection to, and especially playing this music, which a lot of it has a lot of spiritual connections. And a lot of the songs we're playing tonight do not. They're standard blues tunes that they talk about love and loss, and they don't have what you'd call an overt spiritual theme. But this first one, for instance, talks about a man who's just really in anguish over the loss of his sweetheart, his loved one. And you could easily think of that as somebody who's gone through a big tragedy, like is happening in the war-torn areas of this country. At any rate, we're going to do a couple of songs, and then three, and then Elder Watts was going to speak up here.